A good life is a life built around fulfilling work, play, relationships, and lifelong learning. Welcome to Good Life Conversations, where we explore the stories and strategies of inspiring everyday people who are striving to create a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of Good Life Conversations. I'm Jay, the host and the founder of Discover Year, and today's guest is Billy Anderson. Billy is a keynote speaker and the founder of the Courage Crusade. He's also the author of a book called Your Comfort Zone is Killing You. And welcome, Billy.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here.
Billy and I met at a fair. It was like an education and career fair in Toronto, probably 5-6 years ago now. And Billy came over to our booth. We had to discover your booth, and he was just there to check it out. He said, "Oh, it seems like a cool event," and he's a curious guy. And he came over, and as you might guess, maybe I was drawn to his mustache right away. He had a very cool mustache, which you don't see a lot of these days anymore. And Billy came over, and he was a really curious person. He had a lot of questions to ask. At the booth, we got into a great conversation right away that lasted longer than you might expect at one of those things. And I was really impressed by Billy's curiosity and the amount that he obviously cared about helping people. And I could see that he was someone who aligned well with what we were trying to do with Discover Year and his past. He's traveled a lot. He's tried a lot of different things, and he's explored and left jobs that he was unfulfilled in. So he kind of met a lot of the qualities that we were looking for in our mentors. So he's been involved in Discover Year as a mentor for a number of years now. And Billy, if it's all right with you, I'd love to jump right in.
Cool. Let's do it. I'm excited.
Okay, so these are called Good Life Conversations, and they're meant to be quite holistic, not to focus on any one particular aspect of life necessarily, but on all the things that create a good life: relationships, travel, fun, hobbies, work, family, etc. So we'd love to start by giving our audience a sense of what a typical day looks like for you. So you're a keynote speaker and the founder of the Courage Crusade, and we don't know yet what exactly that means, but tell us a little bit about what time you wake up, your morning routine. What does a typical day look like? How much do you work? Do you have any evening routines? How does it wind down? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I get up around 6:30, but the number I don't find is important. What's important is that I get up every day a little bit earlier than I want to. And that's a different number for different people. And that's just a discipline thing, trying to get better at being disciplined. So we got a 2-year-old, so I'm up around 6:30, but yeah, I get up a few minutes earlier than I need to. And then I do something that's just for me. I find that's a healthy way to start the day. So even if it's a few deep breaths, like literally, but something that's just for me, making my bed, I've learned, is really important. Again, to wake up in a rush is kind of the worst. So, but I ideally it's, meditate for a bit, a little bit of stretching, maybe some breath work, something for me. I get to the gym probably 3 or 4 days a week. So there's a decent chance I'm doing some exercise. When that happens depends on the day. But again, I find it's better if I get it done right away, or I start coming up with excuses not to do it. And then I'm working from home. I try to work from coffee shops as well, just to mix up the scenery. Might have some phone calls. Again, every day is a little bit different when you run your own thing, right? Nighttime routine is important. So I find that how organized I feel when I wake up is based on how organized I was before I went to bed. Even just like laying out my clothes, looking at my calendar. And then my wife and I do 3 questions. What was your favorite part of the day? What was your least favorite part of the day? And what are you excited about tomorrow? But we find that's a good way just to kind of cap off the day and not rush. And then I read myself to sleep, because I don't sleep well unless I do. And I read my book until it falls on my face, and then I turn out the light.
Nice. Do you have any particular preferences for reading material at night?
Yeah, for nighttime, I've learned for me, it has to be fiction. If it's work related or even self-help stuff, I get thinking a lot about work. So historical fiction is what it is for me, but just something that I don't really have to think about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. Good. And better book than a screen, I imagine. Is there a specific reason you choose a book?
Yeah, I just think it's way healthier. You get into, there's nothing healthy about going to bed with, your screen. Now I read my book on my phone, so I have to be really careful to turn off, put it to airplane mode before I start reading, or I can get tempted into some other stuff that's just gonna fill up my mind with garbage and keep me awake.
There's the discipline again. Yeah.
Yes, hopefully.
Ongoing pursuit.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the nature of the work that you do down the road here. But before we get to that, can you tell us about any of your hobbies or pastimes?
Yeah, so reading is really a huge one. And again, fiction and the self-help stuff. I do like going to the gym and doing weights. I'm not that strong, but I enjoy it. I play hockey. I love the water ski. And I just like having conversations. So I love meeting people. I'm an extrovert. So when I book a flight, I book the middle seat because then I'll have maybe two conversations instead of one. So that's it. So being outside, being physical, and meeting people and learning about them. Yeah.
I like that as an idea of a hobby. It's not something that I think people mention, but the idea of meeting people, making connections, having conversations. Perhaps we should talk about it more as a hobby because it seems to be a bit lost sometimes these days.
Yeah, and I hadn't even thought of it until you asked the question, but it's definitely a hobby.
Yeah.
And it
Very
can
cool.
and becomes a skill too.
Yeah. I would say I share that hobby. I never thought about it that way, but that's an interesting way to think about it.
Cool.
Okay, we talk, as you've learned over the years, we like to talk about failure quite a bit because of the nature of the general conversation around failure and success in the world today. I certainly believe is skewed. And we emphasize the importance of making mistakes and failures and learning from them. So can you tell us about a recent or important failure that you've had and perhaps what you learned from it?
Sure. Yeah, failures are all up to you. What's a failure, what's not. So my business, it's successful, but it feels like a bit of a failure at the moment. Just in terms of the business is doing okay, but I'm just not as happy with it as I was hoping to be at this point. So that's what I would consider at the moment. Again, failure is a harsh word. It's a learning opportunity. All that stuff is a stepping stone. But no, I was surprised to dig into my values recently and realize that wow, I'm not. There could be some changes. There could be some changes. Yeah.
Yeah. What I like about this is that I think if any of our students looked you up or looked at your website or see that you're an author and you've done a lot of really interesting things beyond like financial success, you've had a really interesting life, which is pretty visible. So what I like about this is that you're saying, hey, what it looks like on the outside is not always what it feels like on the inside.
Totally.
And I'd love a follow-up question if you wouldn't mind. So do you think that your younger self, 18, 20 years old, would have looked at the way your life is now and considered that a success if you were to project 20 years into the future?
Yeah, totally. And in reality it is, right? But we're always trying to make things better. But no, yeah, it would have looked successful. It might have looked a bit boring in some ways. I thought I was gonna like travel every day, my entire life. I thought I'd be a skydiver forever. And eventually just decided there was other things I wanted to do. But no, it would look successful. And yeah, people are always commenting, oh my gosh, I saw you speaking in like Ohio, you're going to Texas. Oh my gosh, you're doing so well. And it's like, yeah, those are like 2 weeks apart. Like, ask me what I did in between those. I stressed about where the next gig was going to come from. So no, it's social media websites, they tell a part of the truth, but not the whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. This is perfect. This is exactly what these conversations are meant to be about, to help, in particular, sometimes students break down what is perceived as the truth through their screens, and to understand that, yeah, you're doing great things. And also, it's never going to be every day you wake up and things are perfect.
No, it's important. It's impossible. Yeah, because then you get bored with perfect.
Exactly.
And you want something different. No, I really, okay, so I wish you said 18, 19. I really wish I had known even earlier than that, even like grade 6 or 7. I wish someone had said that life isn't easy, right? And it can be enjoyable, but it's not easy. And I was led to believe, or I chose to believe that, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get hobbies, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a kid, everything's going to be great. And no, it's just not quite that simple. It can be, but it's this, right? It's ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's important. Tell us, if you don't mind, an important lesson that you've learned about relationships in your life.
Yeah, so one is that any relationship with a person or your company you work for or whatever, but any relationship that's not as good as it could be is because one of you feels disrespected. Yeah, I keep seeing that. It's not as good as it could be. Someone feels disrespected, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel listened to. Um, yeah, so anytime something's not working, I ask myself, do I feel disrespected or how might I be more respectful for them? So that's, and tied into that is just no issue in a relationship is 100% one person's fault ever. It might be 90% one of you and 10% the other, but it's never 100. So it's always like, okay, what might be my role in this, or what could I maybe
Mm.
do better?
Mm. That's thanks. That's really interesting, and it leads my brain to thinking about, often in Discovery Year, the topic of, the difference between ruminating, thinking negatively, and having cyclical patterns of thought about what's happened in the past, and
Right.
reflection, the difference between reflecting
Oh,
on something and ruminating. So that just comes to my brain because I'm imagining you having, a less than perfect relationship or a moment, and you think, okay, what did I do to contribute to
yeah.
the less than perfect situation? So how does that go for you? Like, are you able to think kind of logically and say, okay, what happened there, and separate your emotions, or how does that go for you?
Yeah, like a lot of work to get there. But yeah, I can do that every time. You just can't always do it right away,
Mm,
right? That inner cave person comes out, just wants to fight. But really quickly after, I can be like, no, hang on a second. What might be my role in this? Yeah, it took a long time to figure out. And I still mess it up. Like I had a big argument with my neighbor recently. We had a thing going on and it got heated. And to his face, I called him an effing loser. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, like who was I there? And so I apologize immediately. And then again and again. And so anyway, we always just want to be better than we were yesterday, and we're still gonna screw it up, but no, it's our brain doesn't want us to admit mistakes, so it won't do it on its own. We have to kick that in. So it's like, hang on, what might have been my fault there? And you're sometimes doing it through gritted teeth, like, what might have been my fault? And right away, it's like, oh yeah, like most of that was my fault. So yeah,
mhm.
hard work. Yeah, and it's kind of the difference. Yeah, I like that reflection versus ruminating. You can ruminate, you can vent a little bit, but pretty quick, it's like, what might I do differently next time? Um, what could I apologize for? What am I proud of? Yeah, so trying to get to something productive.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks. And that's another great, perhaps smaller failure in the moment. And I love the
Oh
reiteration
yeah,
that,
good one.
yeah,
And that was a
it
huge
happens.
failure.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to our own crap. Like happy people aren't mean, right? So I was mean to him there, which meant something was bugging me. And what did I call him? I called him I realized after I called him the thing that someone called me. The cool kid called me in grade 8. And I'm
Mm,
like, oh my gosh, I just did the same thing. So it wasn't even about him, it's about me and my own crap I'm working through. And
yeah. No, I really appreciate this. And I think this is such a valuable and important conversation for young people to hear, people that are successful by many measures and still yet are working on it
oh,
every day.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, always, always.
Okay. What about an important lesson that you've learned about work?
A few things, but I'd say I was gonna say the respectful part of it all is treat people well. I think we covered that a little bit there. Like that part's really important. So the thing about work is I don't care who you are, what you're doing, how smart you are, you always have to work hard. You don't have to go crazy, but I feel like there's a lot of people now that just want that quick fix or that quick win or Bitcoin, or I'm going to come up with this invention. And you might come up with the next incredible invention, but the odds are you won't. So just understand, and for all those crazy, amazing, instant success, riches thing you see online, there's a gazillion that it didn't work for.
Mhm.
And so I've just read that no matter what, you're just going to work hard. You're going to work hard. And you know what? It actually feels good as well. And hopefully you have some genius idea or whatever but you're still going to have to work your butt off. And, when people like say, and I can say like, you know, there's no overnight success. It's like, yeah, I'm a 13-year or a 40-year overnight success. Because again, I'm only showing you the good stuff.
Yeah. And I know you read a lot of similar stuff to what I read, and what I like recently about like the bio books of famous people who have started companies.
100%.
Everywhere you go, you hear people think this happened overnight, but here's the backstory. I love the backstories of the almost failing and going bankrupt and coming back, and I think that those are the images I'd like to see more of on social media. But it's true for everyone. There are no easy paths.
Yeah. That's actually one of the best pieces of advice I can give to anyone, because it worked for me too, is read biographies of famous people, especially ones you're most interested in. But there's just, if it's a true story, you hear about the suffering and you hear about what they had to go through. And it's even people that are like, oh my gosh, that must have been easy for them forever. It's like, holy smokes, you went through a lot.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite if you were to recommend one?
I liked Mike Tyson's. He went through a lot, and he's just so honest and vulnerable in his book about all his issues. Yeah, I think that one's probably my favorite. What about you?
I've got a few favorites, but recently it was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of
Oh yeah,
Nike.
okay, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy it, and I think a lot of people who, especially interested in entrepreneurship, would appreciate it. Yeah, it does a really good job of that, of explaining how the company was making millions of dollars, and yet each month, because of the way the production cycle works, they were still almost bankrupt for years,
Yeah.
and years. So it's yeah, I think they're valuable. Those are valuable books.
Cool. Thanks for that. I'll check it out.
Favorite place I know you've traveled a lot. Favorite place you've ever traveled to, and why?
Yeah, it's because there's different ways for it to be your favorite, right? The most interesting place I've ever been to is Bhutan, which is beside Nepal in the Himalayas. And just their approach to life. They used to measure the country's financial success by gross national happiness instead of gross national product. And if a country wanted to build a factory in a Bhutanese town, the town would get together and decide if they thought the factory would make them happier or not. And if not, they said no. So that was just really cool. That really neat approach, and very Buddhist in all the good ways. And yeah, and then gorgeous place, mountains, all that, and real old school family traditions. Family's important. Elders are important. They don't just put them away. You keep helping them. And yeah, that was probably the coolest place.
Very cool. That's a good sales pitch. Hopefully, it'll spark somebody.
Nice.
Okay, so I'd love to hear a little bit more. You've done a lot of things in your career, and currently you're focused on, keynote speaking, and you've done, executive coaching and workshop facilitation. So, broadly speaking, I would say that you're an educator. You're someone who likes to learn things and share them with others.
Yep.
And so if you can tell us a little bit more about kind of how that works for you, like explain your career, your job to someone, as if we were 10 years old.
Sure. So yeah, you summed it up. First of all, I take what I've learned and try to help other people benefit from it in big picture. But it's always about courage, and not letting our fear hold us back from what we want to do, and even more importantly, the kind of person we want to be. Like, I'm happy to help someone quit their job and go for something else that they're more excited about. but I'm even more happy helping someone have the guts to speak up for themselves. Right. And so it's about happiness, but how to have the courage to be happy and go for what you want. But especially around stuff that's going to make you proud of who you are. So I like to think I help people be prouder of who they are.
So really about personal development and personal fulfillment.
Totally. Yeah. And we'll do it through a workshop about work, but it's always about the people there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I like that spin on it. And we only have so much time today, so maybe we can, the students might have more questions for you about it, but I'd love to know quickly too, what is the thing you like the most and the least about the work that you do?
Being up on stage and talking to like 1,000 people about courage is just amazing. But what's that about? That's about inspiring. That's about inspiring and motivating. That's what I like the most, inspired and motivated. What I like the least about it is just how not stable or predictable it is. Like I can do a talk and just be on absolute top of the world, but then you don't know when your next one's going to be. Or there's a lot of I'm a solopreneur. I work alone, so there's a lot of self-discipline needed, and I don't like that at all. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how to change that part of it. Yeah.
And knowing what you know, so everyone listening doesn't have quite perhaps the kind of awareness I have of your past career and different things you've done, but you've obviously migrated away from security, stability, just kind of punching into place, doing good work, getting a paycheck, and kind of knowing that that's pretty secure. And you've chosen something that enables more freedom, at least in principle. Yeah. And so knowing that you don't like the lack of security, I'm curious to know what keeps you doing it. So what I'm hearing is that even though it's a struggle to not have the security, the freedom that you have to do what you want outweighs the stability that you would get by kind of having a little bit more routine or monotonous path.
Yeah, so it's partly the freedom, for sure. But then also just, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just don't know if there is a stable full-time job out there that would be as fulfilling as what I'm doing. And I could be wrong, but that's a big part of it too. So freedom, and also just I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I think it's what I was born to do. And I just don't know if there's a full-time job out there where I could do it quite as much. But then the question is, would I be willing to give up a little bit of that to have a bit more of that stability? And I think about that once a week, at least.
I find that for me, because we have, relatively similar kind of jobs.
Yep.
We work for ourselves and we kind of make our own choices. And I find that depends on what's going on in my life, where I think more about the security or not.
For sure.
What's going on in the rest of my life outside of work sometimes makes me think about that more, or daydream about how nice it would be to just have a steady paycheck.
Yeah. Or take a holiday and not feel like you have to work the whole time, or you'll get behind.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Billy. I would love to know, you've worked with a lot of people, and the next question is really for young people out there, if they are, trying to prepare themselves to be as equipped as possible to have a meaningful career and be successful and do good work. In all the people that you've worked with and your own observations, what do you think are the most important skills, attitudes, behaviors for a young person to demonstrate, to kind of authentically impress people in the workplace?
Right. Like day to day in the workplace?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think honesty and vulnerability is huge. Vulnerability is a one-way ticket to trust. So when someone is able to say, I don't really know what to do here, or that was my mistake, here's what I'll do to make sure it doesn't happen again. But showing a little bit of that humanness, like followers say, I don't know what to do. A leader says, I don't know what to do. Let's figure it out. So it's vulnerability with an action attached to it. So I don't know what to do here. let me think about what the first step might be, right? But that part's, it just makes people trust you and want to work with you. Um, oh, and a learner attitude. So in coaching, we say you're either a learner or a judger, but we actually are both of them depending on the day. But a judger points the finger, a judger makes assumptions. And it's always to try to make ourselves look good, which just doesn't work. So just more of a learner attitude, like, okay, what might I do differently next time? Or what did I do well there? Or what other people think? So just that learner attitude. So yeah, vulnerability and learner attitude, I'd say.
That's great. There's so much that we could dive into there. But both of those are big parts of, which is no surprise to you, I'm sure, of what we talk about at Discovery and what
Totally, yeah, of course.
we aim to achieve. And what I like about it is that that's not often, at least the first part, the vulnerability part is not something that I think young people are exposed to. It's not something they're encouraged to do necessarily, or they don't perceive it to be a skill that people are looking for. So
Right.
it's good for them to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it feels every time we do it, every time I do it, it feels like a weakness. Your insides are telling you, whoa, this is a bad idea. But no, it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not the only mentor to share that advice either.
Cool.
So
Cool.
yeah, that's reinforcing. Okay, so I'd love to wrap up with a question, with some advice from you, and we aim to get our students out there and give them a bit of a structure and some thoughts for them to grapple with and ideas to consider. And in a world, we call these good life conversations because I think that there's a lot of mixed messages for young people today, given how they take in information largely through, screens.
Right.
And so knowing that most young people are looking out into a world where every Billy Anderson seems to be killing it and
Yeah, and
never
happy
having
all the
any
time.
issues, happy all the time, living in the infinity.
Never lazy. Yeah.
What advice do you have for young people to help them live a fulfilling and satisfying life?
Right. So a couple things. One is get off your phone or limit the time. Like have real conversations instead. That's one thing. Like when you talk to someone, a part of your brain lights up that it needs, right? It's belonging. And social media convinces us that we're socializing, but that part of our brain doesn't light up. So then we don't have real conversations and we think we're getting it here and don't realize why we're unhappy. So try to limit that stuff. The other one is just never worrying too much about 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And I remember I was in grade 7 when my teacher said, oh, you should be figuring out what you should do for the rest of your life. And like the worst advice I've ever got in my life. And Jay, we've talked about this. A quick metaphor that I love is, if you're driving Toronto to Montreal, it's about 4 hours. You're driving at night. Your high beams on the car show you about 100 meters in front of you. So you drive the 100 meters and then you see what's next. And you drive the next 100 meters and then you see what's next. And eventually you get to where you're going to. So just clarity comes from action. So it's like, hey, I think I want to try this job. Try it. And then once you try it, you'll have a new view. I want to keep doing it or I don't. What do I want to do next? And just that following the energy, not the shoulds. So not what you feel like you should do. It's like, what do you think energizes you? And then lastly, I'm saying a lot of things. It's about adding value. So people say, oh, I need to make $1 million. Like by the time I'm this age, don't do that. Instead say, how can I add $1 million of value to the world? And then the money will come. So it's just, what's your contribution? What are you gonna add to the world? Does that make sense? I feel like I went all over the place there.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Limit your screen time, which is certainly a conversation that we have with our students a lot.
Yeah.
Short-term planning. You can't really know if you want something until you've at least explored it a little bit. And aim to contribute $1 million worth of value rather than make $1 million. I think those are all really great pieces of advice that tie
good summary. Yeah, good summary.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, Billy. So I am hearing from this, what's standing out to me the most is, Billy is someone who, by all kind of objective metrics is successful in his life. He's midlife. And what I love about this is we're catching at a time where he's not the happiest he's ever been. And he's
Yep.
asking himself questions about his career, and that's good. It's great to normalize that. So what I'm hearing is, and Billy was telling me before about he re-examines his values every once in a while. And when this is happening, that's what he does. And I'm hearing that there are benefits to working for yourself, and there's a trade-off, and you got to kind of decide what's most important.
Yep.
And the value that he gets from creating relationships and talking to people as a hobby. I really like that one. That's a great hobby that I'm taking away. So thanks very much, Billy. It was great to chat.
Awesome. Always good to talk with you, Jay.
Thanks, everybody. This was Billy Anderson on the Good Life Conversations. I'm your host, Jay. Looking forward to the next time.